Welcome, guys! Another week, another Fatal Frame. This time, we're going to be taking a look at Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly. Now this game right here. If you know anything at all about this series, then you probably know of Fatal Frame 2. Go to any, and I mean any, top 10, top 5, top 25, whatever list of scariest games ever, and you will more than likely come across Fatal Frame 2. Not the first, not the third, the fourth, and especially not the fifth on the Wii U. No, you'll come across Fatal Frame 2. Why is that? Could Tecmo have possibly improved the formula of the first game so much that the sequel outshined the rest of the series? Maybe. Maybe watch the video. Put a lot of work into it. So yeah. Anyway, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly is the 2003 sequel to the original Fatal Frame, based on a true story, sort of, but not really. Once again, developed and published by Tecmo and released on the PlayStation 2, original Xbox, and, surprisingly enough, has a Wii remake. Side note, when I discovered this Wii remake, I leaned very heavily into making my video about that version of the game. I thought it would have been a nice surprise because I doubt people know of the Wii version. I didn't know about the Wii version, and I'm doing a playthrough of the series. How the f*** would you know about it? But, no. This version does not have a North American localization, and I find that both disappointing and not surprising in the slightest. Fatal Frame in the post-PS2 era never really seemed to get that many North American releases. The Wii U version didn't even get a physical copy, and the fourth installment on the Wii never even got a translation. After seeing this problem with the Wii version, I decided just to stick with the PS2 version. I really didn't feel like chasing down a sketchy English version for Dolphin, or even purchasing one of the rather expensive copies I came across to play on my modded Wii. Too much trouble, and I already have the PS2 version, so that's what we're sticking with.
Didn't we always promise each other that we would always be together?
Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly stars twin sisters Mayo and Mayu. While visiting a spot from their childhood and reminiscing, one of the twins, Mayu, wanders off to chase a crimson butterfly. This in turn leads the sisters to being spirited away to All Gods Village. Similar to the original Fatal Frame, this place is cursed from a ritual gone wrong. And because I guess moving to a town that doesn't require ritualistic sacrifices is just being unreasonable. Anyway, the ritual in question causes the village to live in perpetual darkness and relive the failure of that night for all eternity. The ritual in this case is called the Crimson Sacrifice. Cliff Notes version, this is a sacrifice performed every 10 years or so, in which twins, usually in their mid-teens, are prepared for a sacrifice. This is because the villagers believe that twins are a single soul split in two. The ritual, which I'll let you discover in depth on your own if you want, is believed to unite the souls and satisfy the hellish abyss, thus preventing the repentance. This ritual is where the crimson butterflies come from, and as you play along, you'll find out exactly what they are and what they represent. Now, obviously, this ritual didn't go well, and the repentance occurs anyway. And from the moment these two sisters enter the village, you know things are just not going to end well. After some brief exploring, the sisters soon find the camera obscura, and then eventually get separated. The majority of the game revolves around Mayo trying to rescue and reunite with her sister. And once again, I feel like Fatal Frame has a really strong and well thought out narrative. I would find myself listening to and reading the various recordings and texts when I wanted some downtime to figure out what exactly happened to this village. The creators did a great job of yet again creating a uniquely disturbing and chilling ghost story, which I greatly appreciate. Now, I'm not sure which game story I prefer, but I do enjoy the sisters' relationship more than I did the brother-sister relationship from the first game. That might be because this game is about twins. I mean, makes sense that there is more of a focus on that interpersonal relationship than in the first game. Anyway, that's just a brief synopsis of the story. It gives you the general idea of what's going to happen. Fatal Frame 2's gameplay is essentially the same as it was in the original Fatal Frame. You see a spooky ghost, You get spooked, you raise your camera up, take photos until the spooky ghost either goes away, you die, or you call Luigi to borrow his vacuum cleaner. Fatal Frame 2 is also still very much a survival horror game. Same song as before, there are fixed camera angles, limited save spots, riddles and puzzles that need to be solved, a lack of resources, an abundance of enemies, and backtracking. Now, while that basic gameplay is nearly unchanged from the previous installment, Fatal Frame 2 does differ in certain areas. The upgrade system has been completely reworked. Instead of Spirit Stones being used as ammunition for the camera's special functions, it has been reworked into the upgrade currency. You now spend the Spirit Stones to unlock the initial upgrade, and then spend your accumulated Spirit Points to obtain the upgrade. Personally, I enjoyed this method way more than I did with the original Fatal Frame. In that game, I felt having an additional limited resource on top of the limited rare camera film was a bit much. At least that's what I thought. If one of you, dear viewers, ever find yourself playing any of these games, then you might think differently. Me, I like Fatal Frame 2's upgrade system better. It's more coherent, more organized, makes more sense, and is just better, I think. The camera also feels a bit smoother to use. I don't know if that's because I'm used to the gameplay at this point, but I feel the camera aiming and capture was a smoother experience this go around. Even capturing the vanishing and hidden ghosts was nowhere near as difficult as it was in the first game. And I also mentioned in my last video that I found the original Fatal Frame to be fairly easy. And that still rings true. Even in spite of the game throwing a lot more ghosts at you this time around, there are several instances where you have to fight multiple ghosts at once, sometimes with different attack patterns and other times in close quarters. There's also a larger variety to the ghosts themselves, so they really did try to address that problem I had with the first game. Again, it was still easy, at least on the normal difficulty mode. And I'm actually about to start my second run here soon on hard, so if it changes I'll let you know in the description update or something, but they're still kind of easy overall. Another aspect that has changed is the layout of the game. The original Fatal Frame took place entirely in one location, the Himuro Mansion. This meant that you were going to do a lot of backtracking to and from the various rooms to solve puzzles, unlock new areas, and encounter certain ghosts. And that's completely fine. I personally thought the Himuro Mansion was very well crafted, had a great atmosphere, and kept a steady pace of puzzles to solve and ghost encounters to have. Others might not care for the singular location. I would compare it to favoring Resident Evil 2 over, say, Resident Evil 1. If that's your case, Fatal Frame might just be for you. Now, while the game does take place in one singular location of sorts, in this case All Gods Village, this location has multiple areas to explore within said location. Typically, each chapter will take you to a new building that's interior needs to be discovered and solved in order to progress the story. However, even if the story does want you to go to a specific spot, you're still free, for the most part, to revisit past locations and item hunt or ghost hunt, or even take on some of the side missions. There's more variety in that regard. Basically, instead of one large mansion where the entirety of the game will take place, Fatal Frame 2 has several smaller, almost mini mansions sprinkled throughout the story. I think this presentation is why Fatal Frame is the most well-known of the franchise. It's just easier to get into. And after playing it, I truly believe that this setup is why so many people prefer Fatal Frame 2 over the others. It's just an easier game to get into. Another YouTuber I watch, who I highly recommend by the way, link below, NitroRad, made a similar point in his Silent Hill 2 review. Fatal Frame 2, much like Silent Hill 2, is just a lot easier than the predecessor, and even some of the sequels from what I played. That doesn't take away from the game, it's just something that I personally noticed. It's just an easier game to go out and play. There's less of an entry barrier. In fact, an easier entry point makes it more than likely that newcomers to these older survival horror games don't just outright quit when they get stuck. Fatal Frame 2 being more forgiving isn't too big of a blemish. The overall gameplay and mechanics are still solid and provide a mostly satisfying experience. So I'm not going to say not to play it because it may be easier than other similar games. Next, I want to talk about the visuals because they're pretty gorgeous. Visually, this game still looks great even over a decade after release. Once again, the ghosts are creepily designed and can catch you off guard in the middle of your exploring, and the Lost Village is really appropriately moody and helps set the tone for the story. This is yet again another place that makes you feel like you don't belong. I also enjoy the contrast they have between the harsher reds and more somber grays and blacks. The Crimson Butterfly motif really works beautifully with the rest of the game, and the cutscenes also continue their trend of being creepy and disturbing and just visually unsettling in general. All things considered, the looks of this game have aged remarkably well, and helping with the stellar visuals is the sound, specifically the soundtrack. I mentioned in the last video how the OST of the original wasn't something I'd exactly listen to on my own time, but I actually enjoy the OST of this game enough to where I could see myself listening to some of the tracks when I want something moody or atmospheric playing. I feel like that's a marked improvement over the previous game where sound, while certainly not bad, wasn't an element I necessarily enjoyed separate from the game. So overall, I think Fatal Frame 2 is a great example on how to make a great sequel. The developers improved on nearly every problem I had with the first game and continued to polish aspects that were already well made. If you were ever planning on getting into the series, I would actually recommend skipping the first game, for now, and just go straight into Fatal Frame 2. They're not so connected as you'll lose any sort of context for the story. It's actually similar to how Silent Hill 2 is kind of its own thing separate from the first, just sharing similar themes. So I do highly recommend Fatal Frame 2, and I'm glad I got to go back and really sit down and experience this game. If you're a survival horror fan, I really think you should track down a copy and give it a try when you've got a weekend to spare, because it's not terribly long either. If you want a great ghost story, take a weekend off and sit down and experience Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.
Didn't we always promise each other that we would always be together?
Greetings, welcome once again to the End Slate. I hope if you watched the video, you enjoyed it. I'm still learning, so it's a process. It was easier to write this episode, but I don't know if the script itself was better. Still getting the hang of it. Originally, I actually wanted to do 4 episodes of this series a month, but I think I might have to do 3 with some sort of retrospective at the end or something else. As anyone that watches these videos know, my bread and butter for this channel is still the walkthroughs, the cutscene movies, the trailers, etc, etc, etc. This is just something I want to do, these little videos on the side. And because I know what pays the bills, so to speak, I have to focus on that mostly. So with all these new games that release during the fall, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to be able to keep the 4 videos that I've set out. 4 is the goal. I may have to scale it back to 3. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do, 4 of these reviews where I cover old games, which requires me to play through all these older games fully, fully play through these older games. In addition to the newer games, which I cover and typically do full game walkthroughs through, in addition to trying to do reviews for newer games, I'm going to try to get into that habit of at least doing maybe one or 2 of those a month, if I can, because it's just something I want to try and branch out to do. But I don't know just yet. I don't know how that's going to work out. We haven't really been hit with the onslaught of new releases yet, so we'll see how it goes, and I don't know, but I do appreciate the people that have watched these videos. The first one did a couple thousand, which is, fine. Again, I know what my bread and butter is. It's the walkthroughs and stuff. That's what people come to my channel for. That's why it's the size it is because of the walkthroughs and stuff I do like that. So I know what pays the bills, but I really appreciate the people that go out and check this video out, or these videos out, I should say, because I do put a lot of work into them, and they take a lot of time to do. And I am proud of them in some way. I'm proud that I've been able to kind of branch out and do different things. But yeah, next week should be Fatal Frame 3. Although that game took a lot. Oh my god, that game took so much longer to beat than Fatal Frame 1 or 2. It was actually surprising. Most of that's from me being stubborn and trying to get as many vanishing ghosts as I could on my first playthrough, which was just dumb of me. There were some things about that particular walkthrough that was just dumb, and I might do a second run through just to make a smoother walkthrough video. I don't know yet. Fatal Frame 2 I mentioned was really easy, so with 3 I was like, I'm not going to use these special features as much, and I tried to focus on the camera, and which meant the fights were sometimes a little bit longer, and then the game itself was longer because it's one big location that's a mix of like stuff from Fatal Frame 1 and Fatal Frame 2 and then its own thing, and it was just a really long game. So hopefully I can get that done by Thursday. That's the kind of deadline I've set for myself, so we'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone that's watched these videos, or the first one, and may watch this one. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and I really hope you enjoy them. I put a lot of work into them, but yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I shall see you when I see you. Take care.